This is Howard Marks, and you're listening to London Real.
London Real, one of the coolest up-and-coming podcasts.
Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. We've just finished with Howard Marks in studio. He is the legendary cannabis smuggler who at one point was shipping 30 tons at a time. He was dealing with the IRA. He was a member of the MI6. He was doing business with the Mafia, the Yakuza, being chased by the CIA and the DEA. This man has legend written all over him, and my studios still smell like weed. He is the real deal. We spoke to him for almost 2 hours, and it was just an awesome pleasure. He is a humble man, a highly intelligent man. He went from a small Welsh mining town to Oxford, and then he started his career smuggling. And he always thought of it as more of doing good, because he still sees no problem with cannabis, and that's the only drug he smuggled. So he's a fascinating guy with a really fascinating story. So I really hope you enjoy Howard and the next couple hours. It was a real special moment, and one of my top 5 London Reels to date by far. I hope you caught Maggie Stiefvater. She's the author that we had on the last episode. She sold, I think, almost 2 million books right now and has been on the New York Times bestseller list for a long time. She's a cool girl, had a lot of American sass, and she was a lot of fun. So I think we're going to see her movies in kind of a Twilight way in the next couple years, so keep an eye out for her. I always love seeing new talent on the show that I know are going to go places, and someday you can look back and be like, I saw them first on London Real. So that kind of shit just gets me pumped up. As usual, we are sponsored by the folks that make Alpha Brain. If you haven't heard of Alpha Brain, you obviously haven't been watching the show. It's something I take every day. It's a nootropic, which basically means nutrients for your brain to make you think better. I don't claim to be the smartest, but I try to keep my body in top shape, and I think Alpha Brain's an important part. If you want to go check out their products, come to our website, londonreal.tv, click on the Alpha Brain ad. It'll take you to On It Labs. They got all sorts of stuff over there. They got Hemp Force protein. They've got Shroom Tech Sport with the cordyceps mushroom, which I use before my kettlebell sessions. They got these crazy kettlebells that look like monkeys. They got battle ropes, which I train with twice a week. They got everything over there. They even got Blend Tech blenders. So if you want to get with the program, with the kale shakes, which I do, with the bulletproof coffee, which we are going to have Dave Asprey on next month, you can ask him about that. Then head on over to Onnit and get stocked up. We are also sponsored by the people at Audible. If you get a little tired of listening to podcasts, I like to listen to a good Audible book, especially if I'm on a plane trip or any kind of a long journey. And right now I'm listening to Eddie Huang, straight off the boat. He's a very cool kid. He's kind of an up-and-coming chef and restaurant type guy, and hopefully we're going to have him on the show. Been in contact with Eddie next time he comes to London. If you want to get a free audio book on London Real, go to audibletrial.com/London Real. You get 30 days free. You can bag a free book, and then you can do whatever you want. You can quit the service or stick with it. So check out that, and like I said, check out Eddie Huang, man. Loving his book. That's it. If you want to come join the party, we're on Twitter. We got a Facebook group called London Reelers. If you want to become one of the interns, send me an email at info@londonreal.tv. We had a big night out with the interns last week. I'll be posting some pictures. There was like 8 of us. It was a crazy night. Tequila was drank, and it got a little crazy. So it's a lot of fun, some really cool people, and you'll learn a lot of stuff. And that's it. I'm off to LA next week. I will hopefully be taping shows with Daniel Bolelli of the Drunken Taoist podcast. He's a very cool dude, philosophy fighter is what I would call him. And then I plan on seeing Mr. Brian Callen, who I'm sure you've heard on the Rogan Show. He also has his own podcast, which is very good, and especially his shows when he has his dad on. It reminds me of my dad. And we'll be sitting down with Brian. And then otherwise, I'm going to try to take a break and get some sun so I'm not so pale. So that's the plan, and then we'll be back in the UK. But for now, I give you Mr. Howard Marks.
Okay, as they say in the Marines, hooah. Is it Hua, is it?
Hua.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Do they? Yeah, I
when they're
didn't know
about to
that.
do something like
Right,
some
Hua.
kind of mission.
Sounds
or-
quite camp for Marines, isn't it?
No.
Yeah,
I suppose I'm thinking like, Hua. They're a bit more Hua.
You're crazy, you know that.
I'm sorry.
All right, guys, here we go. Yeah? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. With me today is Mr. James the Colossus Thompson, who is a heavyweight mixed martial arts fighter who has appeared in Cage Rage, Elite Extreme Combat, the Pride Fighting Championship, and who is definitely not Mr. Nice in the cage.
Like what you did there, Brian.
You like that?
I like that, mate.
I've been working on that for a couple
No,
days.
that's good, mate. That's good. I'll
all
do
right.
that.
And our guest today is Mr. Hereward Marks, who is a Welsh author and former international cannabis smuggler who moved consignments as large as 30 tons, avoided the grasp of international law enforcement for 2 decades, and was connected with groups such as the CIA, the IRA, MI6, the Mafia, maybe the Yakuza.
Yes.
He was eventually convicted by the DEA in 1988 and handed a 25-year sentence to the federal penitentiary, but you were released in April 95 after serving only 7 years.
That's absolutely correct, Brad.
Howard, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
It's
Thank you.
it's a real pleasure having you.
No, it's good to be here.
I think in some ways you're like the quintessential London Real guest.
Thank you.
I don't know exactly what that means.
No, I was wondering myself, but it's a good thing, Howard.
Yeah,
It's a
it
good
sounds
thing.
good,
Yeah, it
doesn't it?
sounds good. It's good.
It's a compliment, definitely. Howard, I moved to Britain in 1997
Yeah.
as an American, obviously, and I went to work in the city in finance. And one of my first introductions to British culture was reading your book, Mr. Nice. And I just assumed that everyone was like you.
Right, of course. You must be very relieved to find it.
Yeah, that soon changed. But it was such a wonderfully written book. I don't know what it is about it. It was a lack of ego or your storytelling. I don't know, but it really hit home for me, and I loved it so much. And I was just wondering if you could tell us about the book. And also, I was wondering, why do you think that as a society we love the rebel, we love the Robin Hood type, or the John Dillingers or the Howard Marks that seem to be flaunting the law with some type of like higher purpose or greater good?
Yes, I mean, I think its success was largely due to my having entirely the wrong target audience in mind when I wrote it. I mean, I wrote it for fellow geriatrics, really, to sort of give them a sense of nostalgia or to try and inject some glamour into their shit-ridden lives. None of those bought it, none of those bought it at all, but the kids did. So, I think when you mentioned the lack of ego, this is really just due to thinking I was writing for another group of people.
So how old were you when you wrote that book?
I wrote it after I came out of prison.
Okay, so that was your early 50s then.
Yes, early 50s, yes.
And you thought it was just kind of an ode to
Good
life of the past.
Yes,
And
yes, I did. Yeah, I never thought it would be sort of picked up by the younger generation.
which it was, and you became kind of a folk hero or a symbol of a new generation, really?
Something like that, yes. I mean, I think its success obviously was largely due to the amount of sort of cannabis smoking that was going on here, which I didn't know really. I'd been banged up in prison in the States. I had no idea how popular it was. Because in my early day, cannabis smoking was pretty much the privilege of sort of middle-class academics or something in universities. I mean, the postman wasn't smoking it, the plumber wasn't smoking it, but when I came out of prison, everyone seemed to be smoking it.
Yeah, can you explain that? Because I think these days, especially with the medical marijuana in California and in America, everyone seems to be smoking it. But
Yes.
you were introduced to it at Oxford, is that right?
Yes, that's right, And as I say, it was a sort of, deemed as some kind of intellectual academic experiment with themselves. And of course, everything was imported then rather than sort of grown in the backyard or in various sort of clandestine places. So that's changed a lot. But I wasn't aware of that change.
I was thinking, do you, because like you say, importing it, there's so much to that, like you would know.
Yes, right.
But there's so much to that. Whereas getting a room, setting it up yourself, and with the cost, it just seems to. Is that what usually happens now?
Yes, I mean about half of the cannabis consumed in Britain is grown in Britain.
Right.
Yes, I mean roughly about half of it, which of course makes it very difficult for the authorities to legalize it now. I mean, if it was all imported, they could slap an importation tax or slap some sort of tax on it. Now it's going to be very difficult. I mean, people don't pay tax growing cabbage, so they're probably not going to.
I never thought of it like that. It's almost like distilleries, isn't it?
Yes, no, that's right.
Yeah, of course, it's exactly the same.
It's like a post-prohibition thing in the States, yeah, of course.
You mentioned that all along, even when you're doing your dealing and your smuggling in the 60s and 70s, that you assumed it would be legalized at some point.
Yes,
right?
yes, and I'm still of that sort of like frame of mind that it's just about to be legalized. I've felt that for sort of 50 years now, so by inductive logic, it's obviously I'm not worth listening to. I mean, I still feel that.
Do you
Optimistic.
Yeah.
Do you see the progress they're making in the states? We just had the state of Colorado, the state of Washington legalize it for non-medical uses.
Yes.
There's still this overshadow of the federal government and what they're going to do. But is that quote unquote progress in your mind?
Oh yes, very much so, and from the most unlikely place. I mean, I thought that America would be the last country to somehow or other pioneer its decriminalization or legalization. Particularly for recreational purposes, yes. I mean, medical marijuana, you can see that that's bound to get through sometimes. If there's something around which can cure you, then doctors, who have taken the Hippocratic Oath, are sort of almost ethically bound to try and make that legal. Yeah.
And you thought the States would be the last place because it has such a Puritan... Well, you were caught up in the Reagan era of the just say no.
Yes.
You could even argue that your arrest and conviction was based on the fact of this gung-ho president saying just say no, the war on drugs, etc.
Yes. I mean, they didn't have to think about whether or not to arrest me and charge me. I was an obvious candidate for that. Yeah.
So in a way, it was more of a political decision than a legal decision.
Yes.
And did you ever consider yourself a political prisoner when you were in the federal pen?
No, I mean, I did it for the money. I didn't really, I can't pretend I was doing it for any other reason. I was foolish enough not to have studied American law, so didn't know whether I was breaking it or not, because there are so many sort of all-embracing laws in America, like racketeering or continuous criminal enterprise, which we're not familiar with over here. But they can't say, oh, well, I didn't know, I did know I could make a lot of money by doing it. So I just regard myself as having lost at the game that I decided to play. I don't think it's a case for sympathy or tragedy, really, at all.
If you had more legal insight, would you have done things different in America?
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And then you probably would have continued longer?
Continued longer, yes. Maybe never got caught.
What would you have done differently?
Well, for example, my ex-wife was arrested.
You start with the ex-wife.
Well, she was arrested as well.
Right.
Purely because she answered the phone at home. I mean, a couple of people bring up, I said, Hereward there. No, he's in Hong Kong for a week or something like that. And that, by American law,
conspiracy
is further in the conspiracy.
Because she lied where you were, or just because
because she was aware that she was assisting someone who was reasonably expected to be a dope dealer, finding her husband, who is a dope dealer, and so she got arrested and extradited for those sort of reasons. So obviously, I would have, set things up so she would never have had to answer the phone. There's a list of things like that, which it wouldn't have taken long to read a bit of American law. I was just very stupid.
You were always one step ahead of the authorities, and I think you've been said that you even had better technology than the authorities at that time.
Well, we did. We did. I mean, that's the big difference, I think, between then and now. I mean, in those days, we had more money to spend than the authorities did. We had faster cars, we had better communication devices, we had faster boats. Now the gap in technology between law enforcement and those breaking it is massive. It's absolutely massive, particularly when you think of mobiles and computers and everything, and the data collection that they have. So it would necessarily be a very, very different business now, I think.
Okay.
I mean, it probably requires the same sort of characters to do it, but definitely a shifting goalposts.
Did you have a whole legal team with you and an accounting team, and did you have people that you kept close that would advise you of what to do, not to do?
No,
Was that all
no,
in your head?
yes, it wasn't that sort of setup at all. I mean, I did have an accountant, accountant's firm, but that was really, and I'd be careful to ensure that only sort of legitimate money, or sort of like apparently legitimate money, would be handled by them.
And you had your legitimate phases, right? You ran a wine importation business out of Palma.
Yes, I did. I ran loads of things, everything from sort of massage parlors in Bangkok to bars in Spain. But I mean, they all lost money.
Okay.
But I mean, that was my way of paying tax, I suppose.
Okay. I mean, when you did that legitimate stint, like in Palma, what brought you back in? I mean, what ultimately was it? Was it the juice, the adrenaline, the fun?
Yes, all that. I mean, it's I found cannabis smuggling, more addictive than any other activity I'd ever done.
Yeah, you described it as a game.
Yes, it is a
earlier.
game. Yes, it is.
It's obviously the money and everything, but getting one over.
Yes.
And especially when it's cannabis.
Yes.
It's not.
Yes.
It's not harming people. You're actually doing benefit.
Yes, I mean, I never lost any sleep at night
No.
thinking I was doing something that was morally wrong.
No, of course.
And I have always felt that the law against cannabis use is rather sinister and evil. So felt in sort of some naive, idealistic way that I was actually doing good.
Yeah.
No,
Did that keep you going sometimes?
Yes.
Where when it got hard, you were
yes.
like, I am doing the better thing.
Yes.
I am Robin Hood.
Yeah, not Robin Hood, because I've never robbed the rich.
Okay. Fair enough. So then who would you equate yourself with in those hard times when you're like, I am doing a greater good here?
The only, I'd like to, this has never been asked me before, but the first ever first ever outlaw, the first ever person to be called an outlaw was a British outlaw called Hereward the Wake. And Hereward sort of, obviously it's the same name as Howard, really. And the idea is sort of just waking people up to kind of thing. So I would say more like Hereward the Wake than Robin Hood.
And what was Hereward known for?
Being an outlaw, but not sort of breaking the law, just almost like a dropout, living outside the law, which is what the word really means. I won't take anything from you, but don't expect anything from me.
Not being encompassed by the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Dropout really is very close to it.
Right.
I was watching your movie the other night, and I know it's a movie, and it's not exactly your life, but
Sure.
it portrays you. I mean, you graduated from Oxford with,
Yes.
was it a nuclear physics degree?
Yes.
Okay, and it seemed like you tried to kind of go straight. You stopped smoking cannabis, you moved to London, you started teaching.
Yes.
So something in your mind must have said, okay, now it's time to get serious, Howard? Is that...
Yes. I mean, I had a conventional career in mind, which was to be an academic, to be a lecturer or a teacher or a research fellow or something like that. And I was reluctant to let that go. But at the same time, my involvement and the amount of time I was spending on cannabis dealing or cannabis smuggling was increasing. And there came a point where, it's so gradual. There wasn't a sort of like one moment to anything. But certainly by the time I was 25, I, looking back, had then abandoned the halls of academia, if you like, and become a dope dealer.
It shows you that first deal in the movie, and Rhys Ifans portrayed you, and he's, we all know he's a badass actor.
Right.
And it was fantastic watching him being you. But I think you drove a car from Germany or Switzerland loaded with hash all the way to the UK. And it was funny, the kids these days forget that there used to be all these individual borders between these countries.
That's right, yeah.
So you have a potential adrenaline rush, frightening moment every country you go through.
That's right. The rewards are much greater in those days.
And then
given the adrenaline.
And then you have to take the boat across, and then you have to go through UK customs as well.
Yes.
How was that? How did that feel? Because in the movie you looked very cool doing it, but how was it? I mean, was it?
Well, it was wonderfully exciting,
Okay.
and of course scary. I mean, the comes about. God, what's going to happen? Anything can happen. I might never go home again. I might be gone for sort of 20 years or anything. And all that fear comes in, and then you almost submit to it. you know, okay, well, I'm going for it, you know. What
If
the
it happens,
hell,
it
you know,
happens.
Yeah, let's go, you know, just give it all I've got. And then when, you know, you cross that border, I mean, as I've said several times, you know, it's like a sort of religious flash or non-sexual orgasm or something. I mean, it's just a wonderful feeling when you get through. It's I've never had it from anything else, ever.
It's almost like gambling, except you're gambling with your life.
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
that is what it is, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So I can
you are risking
imagine
that, yes, it is.
the relief, what comes, not only is your life okay, but you've got X amount in the back of the car.
Yeah, you got a big
Do you know what
bunch
I
of
mean?
money
Yeah,
too.
you've got lots of money as well.
Yeah.
To go, yeah.
And then you do it again at the next border, and the next. You must have been exhausted by the time you got home.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, the sort of final border is, of course, you know, the crowning border. You
So
know.
how many times did you pass different boats? I was just thinking of
On
one
one
border.
one run could have up to 3 or 4.
Oh,
borders,
Jesus.
yeah.
You know, I'd be able to maybe do one, but when it comes to the third, I mean, like...
And not only do you have to roll through, but you have to also be composed. Is there any way that you used to talk to yourself, or would you try to become someone else in order to be cool with the customs officials?
There was no sort of like script in my mind or anything like that. I mean, just the obvious things. You mustn't look nervous. You've got to look relaxed, you know. Well, actually, you can look nervous sometimes. I mean, it's odd. I mean, in the 60s, sometimes the best disguise would be a squalid hippie who's obviously a smoker and not very rich, you know.
Okay, so they'd let him through.
Yeah.
Because he might have a small possession, but he's not smuggling.
Yeah. So I mean, it would change, you know. I'd want to sort of like not conform to the profile they had of what a smuggler is, but that would vary both from their side and my interpretation of it.
The more you think about it, I would imagine, the worse it gets.
Yeah, because
Like
you know what it's like
anything,
when you start thinking of double bluffs, treble bluffs.
Yeah.
You know, again, though, the similarity with gambling, isn't it?
No, massively. Yeah.
James has some experience
Yeah,
with
yeah,
gambling.
Sorry, I got lost. I got lost there for a second.
You know, there's a part in the book where I think you go deep into Pakistan. Is that it?
Yes.
To go, is it to go pick up some hash? Is that right?
It was more to test the quality of the hash. I mean, there was a significant investment. You know, I mean, $1 or $2 million by my American Californian partners.
Okay.
And Pakistan, obviously, very sort of like careful who they let into a hash fort or something like that. So my job was just to ensure the quality, and the Californian lads were very politically minded, and they wanted to. And well, I mean, even America was, you know, heavily against the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. So I had to ensure that each block would be stamped with something like "Smoke Russia Away" or "Crumble the Kremlin," or you know, something
Really?
like yeah. So I had to make sure the stamp was right and the quality was.
And this is early '80s that you ventured in.
This is mid '80s.
Mid-'80s.
Yes, yeah.
And
yeah.
and did you try to dress up and look like a local? Did
Oh
you?
yes, and I even had a Pakistan passport as well.
Okay.
Of course, dressing up looking like a local doesn't require a sort of great deal of makeup or anything. You just, you know, put something over your head and something over your body, and that's it. And sit in the back, being very, very quiet, hoping that they talk to you.
Everything crossed.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried the wax, the THC wax, rather than the hashish?
What, the oil?
No, I think they do actually call it wax. It's like I don't know, it's like a wax. And it is just almost pure THC.
Yes, I mean, it's what they also call scuff or something like that.
I'm not
It's
sure.
like live THC. You sort of scrape it off the plant when it's alive. Yes,
That'll
yes.
be it.
Yeah. Well, traditionally, that's the way they always used to do it in countries like Nepal, Kashmir, where, you know, kids actually would sort of run through the fields with like Hessian clothes.
Right.
So the stuff would like
Stick
rub
on
off on that, and then they would like take it off with a knife, and either go like that to make what they'd call a temple stick, or go like that to make what
Wow.
they call a temple ball. You know.
God. That's mental.
What is your preferred method of consuming cannabis?
A traditional 1960s joint with lots of tobacco, actually, is my preferred method. But
Which is the first one you spoke at Oxford, pretty much?
Yes, it was. Yeah, yes. I mean, and I think very often the first hit you have of anything remains the best. You know.
And will you ever stop smoking, or does that thought ever enter your head?
It does enter my head. I mean, I get bronchitis once a year. It sort of always enters my head then, and usually it doesn't dissipate unless I give up smoking for about a week or two. Okay. But in American prison, I give it up for 5 years. So I don't feel that worried about it. I think, if a doctor says, look, you better stop, I can't stop. I know there's other ways of getting the same high by eating it or anything like that.
Are you a fan of eating it or any other drinking it? In California, there's so many things. There's popsicles and
yes, there's about 100 different ways.
So lotions.
Yes.
Electronic cigarettes now they have.
Yes. No, I've got one of those, like a vaporizer, and everything. Got a portable one. Yes, I've experimented with all that. Like them all, really. There isn't any way of ingesting it I don't like. I don't think. But to answer the question, the preferred way it's a traditional sort of UK joint.
How much does it take you to get stoned now? Have you built up some kind of tolerance?
Immunity or something?
Yeah.
No, I get stoned on the first joint of the day.
And then you kind of stay at that level, do you?
Well, I can get more stoned. I do, and it's not as if I've got any immunity to it. But I suppose I have a tremendous familiarity with the state, so it's unlikely that I just function.
Right. You can still do everything.
I notice getting stoned.
Right.
You mentioned you had a Pakistani passport, and I was just wondering, for people that haven't read your book and don't have a scale, because I don't know how much certain Americans know about you, and I was just wondering if you could just give us kind of a scale, like how many passports did you have, or I mentioned the 30 tons as big shipments as big as that, but what kind of money was involved in passports, and what was the scale of your operation before it all changed in '88?
Right. Well, as regards passports. Because I tried to list them all when I wrote my autobiography, and I could remember 43
passports.
43 different identities, most of which would have been backed up with a passport, yes.
Okay. That's a lot.
Yes, and that might not be the total. So it's at least 43, but it wouldn't be significantly more, I'm sure.
And from what I remember, the title of the book came because you were kind of tired of borrowing other people's identities. You wanted to take a guy who wasn't going to leave the UK, who you could assume his identity.
Yes,
and that is Mr. Nice, but you call him Mr. Nice.
That's right. Yes. I mean, it was he'd been released from prison, and we had a common friend. There's someone who knew both of us, and he'd been convicted of murder and released after about 12 years, which is fairly normal over here. And had no intention of going abroad, largely because he didn't like the beer abroad. He was a simple soul, and he was very happy to let me use his identity. And if, of course, the guy is still around and everything, you can back it up with sort of membership to a snooker hall, or you can keep sort of updating it.
Right. Okay.
And his name was Donald Nice, as you say, but I preferred the name Donald Nice, and it was lovely sort of checking into hotels in Pakistan and stuff. What's your name, Mr. Nice? Well, it's a great name.
I get the feeling that's the part you love most about it, was just the check-ins.
Yes.
Or hearing the deal had made it through, or...
Yes, I mean, all that is good. Obviously, hearing sort of success, the other end of the world is a wonderful feeling too.
And how big was your empire at one point? I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking here?
Well, it's been sort of grossly exaggerated, and law enforcement tends to have its own idea of what a criminal organization is. I mean, there was no organization. It was a bunch of loosely knit people who occasionally came together for a deal and then split off and did another deal with other people and came back together again. There wasn't an organization. When the DEA say that there was, either 300 or 600 people working for me, just not true. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if it was true, you know. And, you know, the DA also say it was the biggest dope dealer the world has ever known. For sure, I was trying to be, you know, but they nevertheless exaggerated it all. And there wasn't an organization, or they even called it the Marx Cartel. There wasn't that sort of organization at all.
Okay. Is that the kind of language that they use to help
It's a
prosecute?
framework that they try to fit all their evidence into, which I suppose is fair enough.
And so they're probably talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product or more, probably
Yes,
billions.
yes, and they do the usual thing of use the street value,
value.
and, you know, all the tricks of the trade, as it were, to try and increase the chances of getting a heavy sentence.
Has there ever been a drug smuggler that stuck with a single product that you know of? Because for cannabis, you might have been one of the largest, but so many other of the cartels, as you say, diversify into so many different
Into
things.
cocaine and
Yeah.
yes, there was a guy by the name of Donald Steinberg who during the early 80s smuggled enormous quantities of marijuana, and only marijuana. I mean, his life is documented in a book called The Underground Empire, which you know, for a third of it focuses on him. And I think at any one time he'd have 3 ships, right, with several tens of tons on them, heading towards the American coast at each time. He would count the money in terms of Samsonites. He'd know that a Samsonite full of $100 was $500,000. So he just count the Samsonite. Yeah, that looks about right. Well, okay, fine. So he was a massive, you know, and certainly the biggest marijuana dealer there's ever been, but stuck to his product.
What happened to him?
He got arrested, and it was at the time that the American justice system decided that the best way of dealing with gangs of various kinds was to go for the leader and get him to sort of roll over on everyone else, rather than the traditional way of saying, who's your boss? All right, who's working for you? Snitch on all of them, and we'll give you a new identity.
Right.
So he had something like that.
Start from the top down.
Yeah. Syntax, they were called it.
Do you think you can ever get so big? You get to a level of making money or of being, you know, good at what you do.
Yeah.
You're always going to get caught. It's almost impossible once they've decided, or once you're known, and they're going to head for you, that at some point you are going to get caught.
I don't think it's inevitable.
Right.
I don't think it's inevitable, because obviously some people will die before that happens. And, you know, I mean, but that's about the only
That's the only way of getting out of it.
Yeah,
There's no other little trap door.
No,
Right,
it
right,
stops completely.
Right.
You know? I mean, they're always prepared to crank it up again, as I would be if I thought I could definitely get away with something.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's one of my questions. So you get out in '95 from the federal penitentiary, and I do want to ask you about that in a little bit. But since then, have you ever thought about going back to the life?
Oh, several times.
Okay.
Several times. I mean, the first time was as soon as I got out, because I thought, well, tactically, that's the last thing they're going to expect. Now, you know, they think I'm going to be still suffering.
Time.
Yeah,
Now's the time.
You know,
Jesus, Howard, you are crazy.
I know, but I didn't. I tried. You know, I started, but of course, so much had changed that I couldn't get any partners or anything like that. It was hopeless. But yes, I think of it. I still think of smuggling ways. You know, yeah, of course. But I've always come to the conclusion, you know, before it's too late, that I probably wouldn't get away with it. So I've not done it.
As in they're watching you, or people are worried about being associated with you, or?
Yes, I mean both, really. I mean the amount of surveillance, because obviously I occasionally come under surveillance now. I mean, probably about 2 or 3 days every few months.
I find that hard to believe that they're still surveilling you.
Well, they would look so silly if I was... You know,
Suddenly came.
if I got away with it.
And they is the UK government, or are they in conjunction with
well,
people
more
in
the
States?
American government, actually.
Really?
But the UK government almost gave up. You know, they said, oh, they're better the devil we know than the devil we don't know. You know, and he's not a bad guy, really. Let's keep him at it.
So you don't have enemies in the UK government as much?
In MI6, I do. Yes, you know, I mean, in the British Secret Service, the guy who recruited me, I've heard, really doesn't like me at all.
And he was friends of yours at Oxford, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people have seen the latest James Bond movie, and they think of MI6 as the building on the Thames.
Yes.
But I was wondering if you could describe what MI6 was when you were recruited.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, officially it didn't exist.
Right.
I mean, there's certainly no sort of building or headquarters on the Thames. It officially just simply didn't exist. And it always used to amuse us over here that, you know, in America, you know, outside Washington, there'd be a big road sign saying CIA, you know. I mean, you know, it was, you know, it didn't exist at all. There were, but there was a sort of idea that there was a British Secret Service, but an understanding, well, yes, of course it can't officially exist, otherwise it wouldn't be a Secret Service. You know? But it's the same firm as James Bond. Yeah. Well, MI6, you know, stands for Military Intelligence 6. MI5 stands for Military Intelligence 5. MI5 looks after foreign spies that come here, you know, to try to ensure that there's no Russian spies or whoever's our enemy these days sort of lurking around doing stuff. And MI6 was a more proactive thing where agents would go outside to foreign countries and spy. Okay. And of course, James Bond was one of those. And I was another one.
You were too.
Yeah, but I didn't have a license to kill. I just saw myself as having a license to deal, really.
So, does that mean there's an MI 1, 2, 3?
No,
Right.
You know, I don't know why they started 5. Yes, I don't know.
To trick you.
Yeah, frighten you.
Right, okay, yeah.
So did they recruit you because you were smuggling, or did they recruit you because they knew you from Oxford and knew you were a smart guy?
Both, really. I mean, they had some, you know, reference of, you know, someone they recruited while he was at Oxford or while we were at Oxford. They recruited this friend of mine, and you know, unbeknown to me. And so they had a reference, yes, he's all right, he's solid, he's okay. And they had their own information that, God, he's smuggling dope with the IRA, you know, they might be able to, because at that time the IRA was a problem.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your involvement with the IRA and how that worked?
Yes, I can. I met a guy by the name of Jim McCann, who'd recently escaped from Crumlin Road Prison in Belfast, and it was the first escape from there since the Second World War. You know, this was in very early 70s, or 1970. And he said he was, you know, Chief Intelligence Officer of the Belfast Intelligence kind of brigade of the IRA, and I believed him. I mean, as far as I was concerned, yes, he was an IRA member. But, I mean, it has to be said that he's the only person in history whom the IRA decided they had to say he's not one of us. So the IRA say he's not. He says he was.
Right.
The safest thing for me to do is to take the IRA's word for it, that he wasn't, that he just called me.
What it seems like I remember when I read your book, so you'll find a link, i.e. this Jim McCann. Now, you haven't gone out looking for him to be part of the IRA, and you don't really know if he was, if he wasn't.
That's right.
But because he says he's known to be linked, then you get tired with the bush of dealing with the IRA.
That's correct, but I mean, at that time in the 1960s, a sympathy with the Catholic minority of Northern Ireland was pretty much part of everyone's left-wing agenda. I mean, in 1969, for example, the British Army was sent into Ireland, into Northern Ireland, to defend the Catholics.
Right.
Basically on the IRA side.
Okay.
So there was a lot of sympathy for the Catholic minority. Also, Jim is of the nature that he's very happy to do sort of interviews with sort of underground newspapers and left-wing kind of newspapers.
Right.
So everyone knew
Yes.
of Jim McCann. He was a sort of like Fidel Castro, if you like, Northern Europe, you know, and more Che Guevara, actually, you know, that kind of image. So all I knew, and just an editor of an underground magazine was a friend of mine, and he had interviewed Jim McCann. So all I knew of, there was this guy who could smuggle in loads of arms into Ireland on the side of someone that all us lefties, supported and believed in.
Perfect.
And I mean, I had no problem thinking it would be better off if he smuggled in dope rather than guns. That was okay for everyone concerned, as far as I could see. So I went ahead. So I didn't have ethical problems with it.
No.
But did it help that they were the left and you sympathized with the left? Did
Yes,
it help
yes, completely.
That eased your conscience into it?
Yes, absolutely. And because they hadn't started killing kids and stuff like that, or risking the lives of sort of, children visiting the Tower of London or something. Okay. They weren't well, yes, I suppose they were. They were more freedom fighters than terrorists, and I know the distinction can be easily blurred.
Yeah.
But, they came across to all of us then in London as freedom fighters.
Was that like a revolutionary idea to think I can smuggle dope through these arms connections?
As I know, yeah.
So did you just came up with that?
Yes.
While smoking, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's not obvious to me. I mean, in retrospect, it's obvious.
Yes.
But at the time, it doesn't seem like anyone would have come up with that.
No, I mean, as far as I know, I was the first, but I mean, other people might well have thought about it.
Did you hear about the guy and then link it? He's getting arms in, you'll be able to get dope in.
Yes.
Or is that how you came?
Yes, I mean, they could get things into a Northern European airport, in Ireland. I had the connections to get things up into the air.
Right.
So,
the rest is history. Like massive light bulb.
See an opportunity here.
I can just imagine, everyone blinded.
Yeah, it was an easy one.
And how did that relationship work out over the years? Was it a net sum game for everyone, or were there downsides for that?
There were downsides, but it was a net gain for sure. I mean, we did a tremendous number of consignments, all of which got through, but one got busted after it got through, if you like, and so like Jim got charged with it, Jim McCann, but he got acquitted, saying he was infiltrating the MI6 through me, and of course I later used the same defence, saying I was infiltrating the IRA on behalf of MI6. We both got acquitted, which is absurd.
How many times can you use that get out of jail free MI6 card? Because you used it. You said you were in it for 9 months technically in MI6.
Yes, no, that's true.
But you used that card for 15 years?
Yes.
How can you keep using that?
Because it didn't officially exist. It was meant to be secret. I mean, you could, just go. You never really we never really get out of their clutches. You could just use that bullshit, really.
But
once you're up there, we never even signed the Official Secrets Act.
So it was just it was having a pint in the pub and talking about it and giving some information here and there. And
yes, and when I skipped bail, they sort of did a sort of like severe kind of investigation into it, and they admitted. The MI6, the lawyer for MI6 admitted, he was an agent for us.
So that put
all he had to say was, no, he wasn't. Nothing I could have done.
But that put doubt in the jury's mind.
Well, it convinced the jury.
Because that's all it is, isn't it? Convincing people.
Yes,
You come up, and you were,
yes,
but just more exaggerated. How are they going to know where that exaggeration?
Well, that's right, and particularly during my trial, the prosecution was trying to say, no, he wasn't a member of MI6, he wasn't, and then they finally conceded.
Right.
They said, all right, he was then. What's the jury going to think? Come on,
God, that must have been amazing when you got not guilty.
That was wonderful, yeah.
Jesus.
And this is when you were acquitted in London, right?
That's right, at the Old Bailey in London.
And what year was that, roughly?
That was 1981 that I got acquitted.
Okay, and you probably became much more well-known then.
Yes, no, that had a lot of publicity, and I, of course, took it as a direct message from God to carry on smuggling,
Right.
The big man upstairs, he's
he's
on my
side.
He's obviously on my hands here. Look how it's going, Jesus. Out of all the characters, I mean, from reading the book, like you mentioned, Jim McCann, good and bad, who are somewhat really stand out for you?
Well, Jim, of course,
Right,
I mean, he's the most extraordinary character I've ever met, I think. And people who know him, people who know us both, mean, that's the only character they say, unreservedly, yeah, you got him right. So I think I could,
Right.
and I think that must indicate how fascinated I was with this
Yeah.
character, that I could sort of get across what he was really like.
For the book or the movie?
For the book.
For the book, okay.
For the book, yeah.
How did the movie do for him?
It increased that, in
Okay.
fact. Yeah, I mean, I think David Thewlis played him
Yeah, it was
very,
pretty
very well. I mean, almost stole every scene that he was in.
Yeah,
actually.
that's true. Yeah. So he was the biggest character.
Yes.
Do you
yes.
stay in touch with him? What happened to him?
No, I mean, I have been in touch with him since I left prison. Seen him about 2 or 3 times, but not for several years now. I mean, not for about 6 or 7 years. I haven't seen him since the film came out, for example. But our children are friends with each other. I mean, they've got better things to do than talk about their dads, but they are friends with each other. So there is a contact. I mean, occasionally see a photograph of him with his kids. And
I thought he died. I must got.
No,
I thought it
no.
was something about a tank. I'm way off here.
know where
I'm on about. I'm on about.
Yeah, no, I don't know
I'm on
about the tank, James.
I'm throwing tanks in here. The lot.
No, he's definitely still alive.
Oh, right.
He's about 73 now. He was photographed by a newspaper quite recently, like within the last 6 months or something like that. He lives in Holland, spends a lot of time in Russia.
Right.
Doesn't come to Britain.
No.
Is there any danger of you associating with any of your former, colleagues or any of your former associates? I mean, is there any danger with you meeting him, or do you have to be careful about appearances when it comes to stuff like that?
Well, generally?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would never worry about meeting Jim, I mean, perhaps I'd be foolish not to, but I mean, I wouldn't. I see my, Malik, who was my Pakistani contact, I see him almost every year. I go and visit him in Pakistan. But it's a friendship, I mean, yes, okay, it's a friendship based on business. And, we're not there planning deals. I mean, he's 91 or something like that. But, we're friends. He's godfather to my son. I mean, and that carries on, So, I don't.
He was one of the few people, I think, that didn't testify against you. Is that right? Because
That's right, yes.
You had a few people that did testify against you.
Almost everyone else was prepared to. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And in the movie, that scene was quite famous because he refused to, right?
Yes.
Did he do time on the back of that? And have you had any relations with the people that did testify against you? Do you hold any ill will against them?
There's a few questions there.
We'll do the Pakistani first.
Pakistani first. Yes, he didn't. As soon as I was sentenced, then when it was all over, there was no trial going to be. I was pleading guilty, and that was the end of that.
Right.
At that point, he at least played the game of, well, I'll cooperate with you. With the authorities, but they didn't, I'd got 25 years, it wasn't sort of what could they do against me.
So you had already made your deal?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And he did cooperate with the authorities after that, but nothing concerning me, and it was quickly discovered that he wasn't really cooperating with the authorities, but played, both sides, for own financial gain. So he got arrested again, extradited again, and did some sort of deal and got out again.
Okay. Did he do time in the States?
Not really. I mean, he spent some time in prison, but it was more on a sort of remand situation. He never got convicted of anything else after.
And the people that did, you said everyone testified against you, pretty much.
Well, not everyone. I mean, it'd be very wrong because, I mean, there were a few very staunch people who didn't, and, I'd like to say thank you to them. But as regards my attitude to people who did. I mean, one was my brother-in-law, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think one can start blaming other people for being what they are. I mean, I misjudged him. I can only blame my ability or inability to judge. He is what he is. And it's up to me to work out what he is.
Yeah.
And if I don't work out what he
You're
is,
taking the chance.
Yeah. So I don't sort of think, oh, that dirty, filthy rat, I'm going to do him one day. Not at all.
Did you think that at the time?
Perhaps a bit, yes. Yeah. But before I sort of analysed it, myself, yes, I did think that. And I think that largely came about because I thought of, You know, I want to see my kids again. Shall I roll over?
Yeah.
You know, I did think that. You know,
course.
I can't really. It never occurred to me. I did. It did occur to me, and I did think of it, and that's when I analysed it properly and realised, okay, it's not for me. I wouldn't be able to look my kids or my parents even in the face if I became a snitch or a grass or anything. But if you don't feel like that, you know.
So you're very famous for never snitching, never grassing people out
Right.
when you had the opportunity to.
Yes.
And you just talked a little bit of that in your mind.
Yes.
But was
Yeah.
that something you always felt about, or was that through your whole smuggling career? Were you thinking, I'm never going to give
Oh
it up?
yes. But I mean, I think even those who did end up rolling over, you know, thought that too. You know, it's only when you're actually in that situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, even now, you know, if you stick a gun to my kids' heads, I'd probably tell you every name I know. You know,
It's like the game what you're playing is your rules. The game someone else is playing is the
It's
same
their-
game, but
yeah,
it's their
their rules,
rules.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
if you can't see their rules, which can be hard to, especially when there's lots to do, i.e. moving this about and getting shipments in.
Yes.
When you can't spot that, I see what you mean. That's a very kind of deep. I suppose you had a lot of time to think about it.
well, yes, there's no shortage of time to think about it. You know,
There's no danger
When they
time.
sling you in a cell, they got 2 years to think about it.
You really cracked this one. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, find this one
Jesus.
out.
Yeah, God.
What was it like in the U.S. federal penitentiary? Because that is the big time.
Yes.
And I think you've been quoted as saying that it was one of the only federal penitentiaries that has a death row,
It is the only one.
which
Yeah.
probably gives it a more ominous feel, or it means you got prisoners in there that are the worst of the worst.
Yes, a more ominous feel,
Okay.
for certain. I mean, to be reminded every day that there's a death row, that building is a death row, of course, is ominous. You know, you've got to think about it. When you see stuff like fellow prisoners helping to build it and everything, you start thinking,
Right.
this isn't right.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is the only federal prison, I think still is, that has a death row. There's plenty of state prisons, obviously, with death rows, but that's the only federal one. And I think the first person to be federally executed there was he called? Timothy McVeigh, wasn't it? The Oklahoma City. But
bomber.
yeah. But you don't see them. You don't associate with these people. You know, the ones who are on death row. It's always that dead man walking thing. You know, I mean, they are kept separate. So
At all time, you won't see a glimpse or, you know.
no, I mean, you might see them being escorted, sort of, or something like that. And I think there was the odd time where if you were, like, you know, there'd be a class that there was a yoga class sometimes where people who were on death row would participate in. But it was very, very rare. You wouldn't have visits at the same time. You wouldn't be sort of like having any recreational time with them. So you're not aware of it that much, other than the building. Not aware of the people who are on death row. You're just more
the
aware
anonymous,
that
it's possible.
Yes, yeah. As regards other prisoners there, I mean, you don't get rapists, you don't get sort of like child molesters, you don't get, you know, the sort of rubbish, if you like, of crime.
Because they're federal crimes.
Because they're federal crimes, yes, rather than state. But even though that was the policy, the principle, many state prisoners, particularly, you know, the gang ones, like the sort of Bloods and the Crips and the sort of El Rookin or sort of Vice Lords in Chicago, all those, they would often be too difficult for the state authorities to handle. So they would be drafted into a federal prison on the grounds that they were too difficult and then you'd get, you know, some of the rubbish. You know.
Okay.
So, but generally you wouldn't. You'd get sort of like, you know, proper criminals, but mainly big drug dealers. You know.
Okay. And how was that first month there, or the first 6 months?
The first month was I was scared. You know, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it at all.
Did you try and change your personality somewhat? Because you very obviously laid back and.
Well, I'm not naturally a macho threat to anyone. Never have been. But I became very aware that it's quite easy to step in shit in that sort of environment, even if you're not looking for trouble. Yes. So yes, I changed. I don't know if it's changed. I just became more careful.
More aware.
Yes, you know, I mean, I'm making sure I didn't bump into people. I mean, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Did you make friends who would look watch your back?
They did, but I would never have to ask them to, you know, because you know, I quickly got a job as teaching English grammar to them, and you know that sometimes required teaching people to read. They would ask me to write things, you know, so even to their girlfriends, you know, they didn't have the ability to articulate. So I would do that. That became an important thing to them. I became a jailhouse lawyer as a hustle within prison, and succeeded, you know, in getting a couple of convictions overturned and reducing sentences. So that made me liked, if you like.
It made you valuable too. You kind of became their voice somewhat.
Yes, yeah. So that's what got me through, I think, more than anything. Yeah.
And the fact that you didn't snitch and grass, did that give you a lot of capital in prison?
Yes. I mean, that only helped. I mean, becoming a sort of, you know, being famous, if you like, although it was less so in America than over here, being famous and being known for not being a snitch, yes.
That hold a lot of weight.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does, yeah.
Wow. Were you surprised when you got paroled? Because it was 7 years from a 25-year sentence.
That's right. I mean, I was surprised, yes. I mean, astonished, actually. I mean, there's a 25-year sentence. I did reduce it on a post-conviction motion to 20 years.
Okay.
On the grounds that I was being punished more harshly than the judge intended, and won that motion. So that was reduced to 20 years. So then I was eligible for parole, you know, a third of that time, which is 6 2/3 years. But even though I behaved myself impeccably and sort of brought the education department, you know, up to the top in the federal system, all that sort of thing. I mean, parole, and parole has gone from there now, but parole was granted not as a result of your behaviour, really. I mean, that is a threshold to be considered for parole, but parole was judged more on the current political perception of the crime that you committed.
Right.
And drugs has never been good for that, you know. So I was astonished to get parole. And I think, and I'm only guessing, I don't know, this isn't documented, but I think what had happened was that the judge was very annoyed with the DEA for sort of lying, you know, to sort of keep me in prison in American prison and not transferring to UK, which is what the judge had wanted.
Okay.
That he was just giving them another sort of like kick up the arse, really.
Okay. So they really pushed to get you to stay, and they wanted to convict you pretty hard.
Yes, yeah. They wanted me to spend as much as possible in prison. Yeah.
Is that because you evaded them so well over the years? Did it become personal?
I guess so. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that it became more personal in my case than anyone else's. I think that's the way they trained, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
they
it's
get
a culture.
officers to
It's a
listen
game,
to
isn't
the
And the DEA, the culture, I think.
Yeah,
is just,
yeah,
We
that's
get our
right.
man and we do the worst possible. And
Yes,
and
it's
it's a very political institution, the DEA. I mean, it gets
Yes, it is.
direction. Almost seems like a mandate from the president. You know?
yes. Well, it was once. Well, I mean, it was formed by Nixon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If I did another job for the Watergate burglars, basically,
Yeah.
there was Gordon Liddy was there.
Keep them busy.
Yeah.
It must be strange to see your life affected by the political winds. You know, it's like one thing if you rob a house, you get 4 years, you're out in 2. But for you, it's almost like your punishment is subjective over the winds of time. And
Yes,
whoever
yeah.
gets elected, was that ever frustrating for you?
It was frustrating, yes, but I mean, so much common knowledge, really. I mean, obviously within prison, everyone thinks that, you know, 'cause, I mean, their only chance of getting out is an amnesty, which is going to be politically determined, or a change in the law, which is going to be politically determined. So you know that you are subject to the whims of political change.
Okay.
You're very aware of it in prison.
What was positive about prison?
As far as I know for sure I emerged a far better person than the one who went in. It didn't do me any harm. I mean, it's not that I suggest anyone should check in or anything like that, but it really didn't do me any harm. made me realize, made me stop taking myself too seriously, made me realize I can't really control events, made me realize I can't control my attitude to any event, you know. And also, and this sounds a bit soppy, but also the power of helping people less fortunate than oneself. It's a spiritual energy which makes me feel good. I never had that before.
First time you did something like that?
Yeah.
Teaching English and helping them with their appeals and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, and that force is quite a strong one. You know,
Have you kept that up, or had the interest in keeping that up?
Yes, I mean that's why. So when I came out of prison, I got so much behind the legalization movement, and you know, I felt at last I had an agenda, you know, a moral and to some extent a political agenda that I could pursue, and that was more important to me than sort of like, you know, writing books, making money, or anything like that. Now it's all become a bit subsumed and interrelated, you know. I mean, I sort of get paid, you know, to sort of talk about legalising cannabis, which is bizarre. But I think during the first few years that I was out of prison, I was, you know, definitely a much better person than the one who went in, and probably a better person than I am now.
It sounds. When I've heard you talk about your prison stay before, it sounds like some people, after they talk about like a psychedelic event, they come out with their ego reduced.
Yes.
Feel more connected to your family and your loved ones. And
Yes. No, I mean that's correct. You know, and of course it's not particularly surprising. You know, you've been there stuck mainly with your own thoughts for several years, and you're going to examine yourself a bit more ruthlessly than ever before.
I suppose that depends on what kind of character you are going into it, though.
To some extent, James, of course, yes. I mean, yes, it does. But, you know, perhaps more the awareness of sort of, you know, and use of the positive aspects of my character.
Right.
That came out in prison. And, I mean, although I would spend times, very sad, crying to myself. And, you know, of course, you know, missing my kids like you couldn't believe. But on the whole, I was happy there.
Right. Did you meditate at all?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
a lot.
Did you know how to meditate before you went in, or somewhere you picked
Yes,
up on?
but because I'd been in prison before.
Right,
I'd been in for 2 years and learnt how to do yoga and meditate then. But I tend to, you know, talking if it's in the present, I tended to give up, you know, revert to debauchery as every time I was free.
you talk
I'm sure that'll continue should I ever be imprisoned again.
You talk about learning yoga in the federal penitentiary, and those two actions just seem so different to me. But is that something they promote in prison?
Yes. It's something that they encourage, and it's something that you have access to. And I mean, I found American prison very understanding of that and supportive of, you know, people who wanted to do yoga, because they preferred it to people kind of doing weightlifting and everything, you know, because I mean, it is a bit of a daft one, you know. First of all, you know, they incarcerate you, ruin your life, you know, make you hate them, and then
build you up,
teach you how to be like James, like able to do something. So it's less of a hate factory to them.
Okay,
you know,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you miss the money? Or the money that lifestyle afforded you?
Not really. I mean, I suppose, yes, I mean, occasionally now I get worried about finances running out and things like that and not being able to afford stuff in the future. But that makes me more like everyone else.
Right.
You know, and I'm not sure if I'd opt for winning the lottery. If, you know, well, yeah, of course I would. What am I talking about? But, you know, it's, I felt I've done that.
Yeah.
You know, that's been done. I'm looking for other interests in life.
I think about that. I think your lifestyle fascinates people that haven't been there, but then you've been there, and in the movie, maybe it's just a great job done by Reese, but you don't seem to be consumed by the lifestyle. You seem to just enjoy doing the business and all that, but you don't seem to be reveling in the luxury of your lifestyle.
No. I mean, the idea of sort of, you know, counting massive amounts of one's own money and masturbating all over them has never sort of struck me as a sensible concept.
Do you, reading the book, you open so many different accounts, and do you still have times where you might be smoking and you might think That's where it is.
No. I know I've never forgotten where I've stashed anything.
Right.
And the bit that's often quoted, which I think is a bit you're referring to, is that once upon a time I was with my ex-wife and we were sitting opposite the bank, and she said, I remember depositing something in there, because I would give a chunk of money to my ex-wife, whenever I made a load.
Yeah.
And what she did with it was her business. So it was she who forgot she had 30 grand in the bank, not me. I remember I gave her 30 grand. I never asked her what she did to it, but
And what was it there?
Yeah, it was 30 grand,
Nice.
Which was a lot of money then.
I'd be taking it around to all the banks. Anything like a metal detector, waiting for it to go off.
What was the money laundering situation back then, or the complete lack of any attention to that?
Well, I mean, there wasn't any law against it, when I first started. I mean, you could walk quite legitimately into any bank with a big suitcase full of money. And some countries, in particular Hong Kong, Switzerland, encouraged it.
Right.
Just go there with a suitcase of money. Please put this into my account.
Numbered account. Maybe they want some ID.
The numbered account is more for books and films, really.
Okay.
I mean, so every account has a number, and you can always have any way you want to dealing with your bank manager. You say, if I whistle 3 times, please deposit it. They were amenable to anything.
Okay. Switzerland and Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely anything, and then Luxembourg too, and. All the Caribbean sort of offshore places. I mean, just very, very easy, but there was no law against it.
I mean, through the cannabis dealing, you start off doing that, and it kind of becomes like with the fraud and the ID.
Yeah.
You have to kind of become a master of disguise. Like, you have to know a lot about where you put in money. I know obviously it's changed a lot, the money laundering. It's a lot harder to do, but you start to become sufficient in a lot of other ways to get that to run at its full potential. Yes.
I mean, you pick up lots of tricks on the way, of course. I mean, certain forms of money laundering, work just as well today as they always did. I mean, if you inflate sales receipts and everything and stick a bag of cash in.
That's that.
Yeah.
Would that be the one factor that would keep you from doing business today like you did 20 years ago? Would it be the money laundering?
Oh no, I'd be able to money launder.
You would? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You just have to be a step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be sort of like flying into banks with a suitcase, but I mean, you can swallow cash in just about any business, particularly second-hand cars or stamps or coins, or there's loads of them.
You were known as being a cannabis man your entire career, and you must have met people in all of your dealings that encouraged you to move to other products. And I was just wondering why you never did.
Well, there wasn't really any sort of pressure or even temptation to move into, say, cocaine or something like that, which would have been
obvious choice.
The obvious choice.
Yeah.
I mean, number of reasons. I mean, the source countries I used for cannabis were not source countries for generally for cocaine.
Okay, Pakistan, Afghanistan.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and
but opium potentially.
Opium potentially, and also cocaine in Colombia. I mean, I did smuggle marijuana from Colombia.
From Colombia.
Yeah, and I did smuggle, stuff from. Yes, I mean the potential was there, but I mean I couldn't even satisfy the demand for cannabis. It never got close to being satisfied.
In the UK or in America?
Anywhere. Yeah, I mean there was
Can you explain that from an economics perspective?
Well, just supply not meeting demand. I mean, I don't know.
So there was just so much demand.
There was so much demand. I mean, why venture into something like I had, and there were some moral objections too. I mean, I was all right about cannabis. I sincerely believed it wasn't harmful at all. I mean, not in any way, but I just only felt it had positive effects. Although I've taken cocaine a few times now, the first time I took it was, like when I was 50 odd, after I came out of prison. And it seemed to me then that people who took cocaine just behaved like assholes and thought they could do things that they couldn't. Whereas people who took cannabis were a bit scared, a bit of paranoia, means a bit more caution, and also I wasn't entirely convinced then that it didn't have a potential for harm, so that just really, I wasn't tempted. And certainly there wasn't anyone, right, we need you to smuggle cocaine.
Okay.
No, there's none of that.
It's a whole set of different, like you said, not only the people who take it generally, but the people who are supplying it's a different.
It's a different ballgame completely, yeah. And I mean, a lot of people think, well, yeah, but you're only smuggling this much, rather than a container full or something. But it's not a question of money per unit volume. I mean, the only criterion really is money per unit time. It's how much you make this week.
Right.
And I could always make,
Yeah, you're right.
So a deal's a deal. You were doing lots of deals and big deals.
Yes.
The fact that your deals were taking up more volume didn't matter.
Didn't make any
difference. It was more of the bandwidth in your brain making the deals.
Yes, and also various considerations. I mean, which is going to disappear? A suitcase of cocaine in a lay-by or a container?
Yeah.
Okay, security.
Yes.
Wow.
And another objection, actually, to complete the list of objections, in cocaine, most people who deal it, well, almost all, make their profit by mixing it up with some impurity or something. Right. And that I'm not happy as I would prefer to put, if it did become a cocaine deal, I'd just put £100 on it or something, but a margin on it rather than dilute it or mix it with some poison or something.
Yeah.
And any sort of structure that seems to favour that way, I wouldn't be happy with.
What do you feel about legalising, obviously, cannabis, but all drugs, for them kind of reason? I mean, it's kind of a big question, that, but
yes,
because that's what happens.
Yeah, generally, I think that any recreational drug so far discovered would be safer to society if legalised and controlled, rather than sort of put firmly and squarely in the hands of the criminal fraternity. I think it would be safer to society. But then, of course, if a drug was synthesized or discovered, that if you took it, it made you kill people or rape kids or something, then obviously I think make it illegal, whether it's natural or not, But I haven't come across such a drug, except possibly alcohol, which is the only one that's legal.
Yeah.
And, there's a bit of me, to be perfectly honest, say a drug like heroin, where the amount you need to get high is quite close to the amount that can kill you.
Yes.
And I think if those two amounts are close to each other, that makes it a dangerous drug. So
of course.
Think a bit about that one,
Yeah,
but maybe it's just, where these drugs will become available. Cannabis, for sure, have it in the greengrocers, perhaps heroin.
You'd have to sign on. They'd have to go through. You'd get pure heroin.
Yeah.
And you'd have to go for a procedure where someone's keeping tabs on you, otherwise you don't get your heroin.
Exactly.
And that's going to be the best type.
Yes.
Okay, it's not going to be cut.
Yeah.
It's got to be better doing it that way than some guy going, and see you later.
Of course, yeah.
I think you were talking to David Nutt about that, about the fact that when the dose to get you high is very close to the dose to
That's
kill
right. Well,
you.
David who first brought it to my attention, because that was one of his, kind of criteria in the scale of harms chart that he invented, I suppose, in a way. And the sort of nearness of those doses is a factor,
right,
that he considers, and it was he who first brought my attention to that.
David's going to be here in May. Actually.
Is he? Oh, he's a lovely man. He's great.
What was it, for people that don't know David, he was what part of the organization was he in the government before he got?
He was chairman of the Misuse of Drugs Council, I think it's called.
And he was effectively sacked because he claimed that cannabis and ecstasy were safer than tobacco and alcohol. Maybe I'm paraphrasing.
Yes, mainly because he said that riding a horse is more dangerous than taking an ecstasy pill.
Yeah.
And people just seem to forget that he actually showed that.
Yeah,
he looked at all he looked at all the people who sort of like crippled themselves riding horses and stamped on them and everything. Looked at all the people who died as a result of taking an ecstasy pill, or possibly, and showed, beyond any doubt, to every statistician's satisfaction, that it is more dangerous.
And that's because the things where people say, it's hard to talk to someone like Leah Betts' parents and have this kind of conversation with them, obviously, but the reason why that did what it did was because it's cut with something which has reacted to something else.
That's right. Or when one's taking too much water after it or something. I've debated with Paul Betts, Leah's father. He was a thoroughly nice guy, and absolutely okay guy. And it's hard to feel sorrier for someone when someone has lost their daughter.
Is this a girl that died from
Yeah, it was the
ecstasy
first
overdose?
ecstasy death,
Okay.
really, or ecstasy-related death.
Okay.
But I'm sure if a car ran over one of my children, I'd want to make those.
Yeah.
I mean, the emotion is in there.
Of course.
I mean, most deaths of drugs have been caused by prohibition rather than by the drugs. I mean, we're all used to only seeing prohibition at work. We haven't seen legalization at work.
And it only makes things worse, and I can't see how it doesn't. I can't see how people
There's no logic
can't see
there.
how, when you look at it, really look into it and see what actually happens, how it doesn't make things worse.
I know. I mean, perhaps, that are right people who deciding, authorities who deciding what to do about drugs, and perhaps prohibition, perhaps even a war on drugs made more sense when initially implemented.
Yeah.
But now we know it doesn't work. It just makes things a lot worse and unforeseen casualties. I mean, prohibition of drugs is a relatively recent social experiment and a disastrous one, and that's obvious to most people.
Yeah.
And I don't see it in with the internet and people getting more information and it's just, I guess, a generational thing.
Well, I think it is largely a generational thing, yes.
But I mean, even what was it? The House We Live In. It's a documentary, and it shows the industry behind. And then you start remembering you have the police, you have certain prisons which are paid for. You've got all these things what go off. If drugs were legal,
well, the entrenchment of its illegality in society, yes, there's all sorts of consequences, such as those that you mentioned, the probation service. I mean, a lot of people's living now is clearly dependent on drugs being illegal. And you can't blame them for not wanting to lose their jobs.
No.
Particularly not these
And
days.
that's why you're against decriminalization, is that right?
Yes. Not against it, but I would see it as a sort of like step towards legalization. I mean, or the mood of the sort of country sort of would be sort of moving towards that. But I mean, to allow the consumption of something and to keep its supply illegal, to me, is clearly irrational.
Back to the David Nutt argument, it's still very dangerous.
Yes.
It's still inflated price.
Yes.
Criminal dealings that go on the back of that.
Yes.
It doesn't really address the problem. In your
No,
opinion.
and the other thing is that, I mean, if it is decriminalized, then people will be taking it who wouldn't have taken it before.
Okay.
Right?
Do you think so?
So it's probably.
Do you think
Probably.
guys-
I know a lot of people that won't smoke dope because it's illegal, which is fair enough. There are many law-abiding people, and in a way,
just don't know that many.
No, I know. It's not as if all my friends have it, but there is a sort of general feeling that democracy is an okay thing, right? And which requires one to obey the will of the majority.
Okay.
Which means you've got to listen to two idiots rather than one wise man occasionally. And some people simply will not smoke dope because it's illegal. If it was decriminalized, they might. Okay.
Yeah.
They might think, okay, well, obviously the message has come across. It's all right to do it,
That's
so that the
terrible way to
demand
think.
will increase, which means that the supply has to increase, which means you're further criminalizing the thing. Okay. In the areas that matter.
Are you hopeful by what's happening in the States?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have a tendency to be too optimistic. As a sort of, that's just a life force.
Well, you said you still keep thinking that in the next month, cannabis will be legalized.
Yes.
For the last 50 years.
50 years. Yes. So they have been.
And I don't think you're wrong.
Any day, any
Seems
day.
obvious to me. But Howard, what do you think the drug landscape will look like in, say, 30 or 50 years? If we could just hibernate and wake up, what do you think really is it gonna look like in that amount of time? When the new generation comes in.
Well, I of course would think that all drugs would be legalized by then, but that's what I thought 30 to 50 years ago.
Somehow I don't think we would wake up to that.
I mean, they've got a bit of a loophole now where they're changing molecules of things, and that makes it something else, like the MCAT.
Sure.
So you've got kind of illegal, legal drugs.
Yes, I mean, it's a race, really. I mean, there's all the sort of like underground chemists adding, as you say, molecules to this, that, the other. But I mean, the American legislature has a way of dealing with that. It just says, well, anything that has that kind of effect with you, no matter what it is. So I mean, if you start, framing the law in terms of the effect rather than the substance,
Right.
you will be able to sort of make all sorts of things illegal.
Yeah, I wonder why they don't do that here then.
Yes, I mean, well, there probably is a move to try to do that, There probably is. But, to leave authorities vulnerable to saying, well, this guy's getting a high from sort of bungee jumping.
Right,
It has the same effect as if he took acid. It would be difficult under British law to do it.
You always dealt in cannabis, which is kind of more of, like you said, like more of a peace and love, not even a drug, something you thought everyone should have. But still, you're dealing in major quantities, around the world. You have tension when something's coming into Shannon Airport and customs isn't going to get it. And ultimately, you're dealing with big places, mafia organizations, IRAs and stuff. And it's always strange to me that you never had potentially what would be a violent incident with anyone, because with that much money gets exchanged, it seems like it happens in any organization. But how did you avoid that? I know you were always known as being a solid businessman and a very good guy.
Not a rip-off artist,
not a rip-off
thing,
artist, which I guess is the key of doing any good business.
Yes. I mean, that doesn't apply just to illegal business. That applies to anything, I think. And also, I think running across the mafia isn't restricted to illegal business either. I mean, whether you're a fashion designer or a motor car manufacturer, particularly in Italy, you will run across the mafia.
Right. We've seen in Japan with what was it? Nikon, one of their big camera companies.
Yes, that's right.
All Yakuza back.
Oh, it's so interwoven in Japan. It's one and the same.
No, for sure it is. Yeah. And so that's going to happen anyway, I think. It's just if you rise to the top of any organization or on the way up there, you're going to come across some criminal organization that has got their fingers in there. Getting back to my own dealings with the mafia, I mean, it was mainly the people who ran, the Gambino family who ran Queens, which is where Kennedy Airport is in. And it was, before they started bringing in dope there with me, they'd be sort of perhaps nicking videos or, stealing stuff and selling, fencing them off.
Like Goodfellas kind of stuff.
Yes. Very much sort of Goodfellas kind of stuff.
Not organized stuff, just clipping pieces here and there.
Yes. Skimming, basically skimming, but with products as well as money. And, they would not invest a penny. So there's never any question of them losing any investment.
Okay.
I would get the stuff on credit or pay for it to send it to them. They would keep 25% of it until I'd sold the other 75%. That was their cut. Once I'd sold the other 75%, I would just give them the money for the 25% that they were holding. So, not that it would occur to me to fuck them or cheat them in any way, anyway, but
you couldn't.
I couldn't.
Because it was almost like they had secured.
Yeah. If I went completely mad,
right.
I thought, those fucking mafias are going to rip them off for all they can. There was no way I could.
So that would literally be like a hold for you to be able to do business in that area.
Yes.
You'd be giving him that. Would they be doing anything, as in sorting runners out, a place to keep it?
No.
They literally.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to keep this.
Yeah, we're going to keep
it.
Yours are kept. How do you want to pick up yours? They would deliver it.
And then you'd sell the 25 and give them the money.
What?
And then you'd have to sell the 25%.
I'd sell 75%.
Yes.
Okay, because they had their money.
And they do sell there.
They're quite happy to wait.
Yeah.
They're sitting on an asset, they wouldn't want to. They would never cheat either. I found them utterly honourable people to deal with.
Dodgy, honest people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you never thought to yourself, oh, Howard, you're getting involved in the Gambino family. What are you thinking? Did you ever think
No, I
that
loved
yourself?
that element of it. I was aware of that, and I used to be fascinated with organised crime before, as a kid, reading about it and all that. So I was very aware that, this is, heavy, but just found it very, very satisfactory and comforting.
Okay, fair enough.
And as long as you went by the rules, why would they
Yes,
they're
yeah,
making
yeah.
money for nothing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as long as you're just getting on with it, they're getting their share.
Yes, and I was, definitely more useful to them alive than dead.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which is always a comforting thought, isn't it?
Yes.
I would imagine. Jesus.
Howard, a lot of fighters, they have these big adrenaline rushes. I'm sure James can attest to this. And in a fight, and then when they're not fighting, they don't always know what to do. And you've effectively retired from smuggling.
Yes.
So how do you get up in the morning? How do you?
Where's the adrenaline come from these days?
Yeah. What motivates you? Or do you need the adrenaline the same way?
Yeah, I do need it. I mean, and I find that the areas I get it, stage fright, really. Basically just stage fright. I mean, I'm on the stage several dozen times a year. And
You were on stage last night in London.
yes, for example. And for the half an hour before I'm on stage, I might as well be facing a border. I mean, I even sort of can smell it on me,
Really?
the adrenaline, yeah.
Facing a what? Like
An audience.
an audience. I mean, but 30 minutes before, it's almost like you're facing like a death squad or something, or
No, like I'm facing a border too.
a border. Oh yeah, border,
something
okay.
where I know I'm not risking anything like as much. I'm not risking the rest of my life in prison. I'm risking looking like an asshole in front of about 400 or 500 people or something.
Right.
But that's bad enough.
Yeah, of course it is.
So that's what I get it now. And I know it's the same thing, because I can smell it on me. I can smell it on my sweat, and it's the same smell, the smell of fear, or the smell of adrenaline.
You have to be thankful for that, right?
Yes, I am.
Because then I guess, is it after the show where you get that endorphin rush, or during the show?
During the show.
During the show.
Yeah,
when you're pulling it off. And
Yeah, when I'm actually doing it, yeah.
Right. So I mean, now you made a living out of transporting weed from A to B, and now you're
Yes.
making a living about talking how you made a living.
Yes, yes, that's true. Yes.
A to B. What's your kind of number one question? What you get faced with most often? What
do people ask me most?
Yeah. What's the most common? What are people most interested about? I'm just thinking in case we haven't covered it.
Yeah, well, it's in terms of the questions most commonly asked. It's what's my favourite dope and do I have any regrets?
Right.
They will pop up every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are those answers?
My favourite dope is the strongest possible hash from places like the Parole. And I have no regrets now, because I'm happy now, so I can't possibly regret whatever got me here. But I know what's meant by regret, so I can give a long answer and talk about the regret I felt. But I always finish up by saying, but I have no regrets now. I felt regret, yeah, of course, lots of times in prison, but I certainly wouldn't want to put the clock back, and risk it not being as good as it is now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 'cause that's what it'd be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And there's nothing you would do differently, per se, or just not get caught, or...
No, not really, because I mean, I think the getting caught bit was a important part of my being happy now, really.
Yeah.
It's probably the best thing that happened to me.
Now, you're a fiction writer now.
Yes.
And now you obviously you had Mr. Nice, which was a legendary book, and you've written a couple other autobiographies.
Yes.
And why fiction? I mean, it's not easy to write fiction, I'm sure.
No, it's not. I mean, there's just partly sort of advice from the publishers. I mean, there's a limit to how many autobiographies one can write, really.
Yeah, some people write 10 of them.
Yes, I know they do.
And they've had probably a tenth of your life.
No, I mean, you can write a wonderful autobiography of one day. I mean, it's possible, but I didn't feel I could do that. So fiction sort of popped up a lot. Particularly crime fiction. Plus, and I mustn't forget this really, because it'd be dishonest to. There was a lot of talk of laws coming in to prevent authors profiting from their previous criminal activities or by writing about them.
Okay.
Now it's unlikely that could ever be ex post facto, otherwise you'd have to sort of put Nelson Mandela back in prison or something like that, or Jesus, even God knows.
So this is people that you wrote about that were in prison that could profit on your writing?
No, this is if I decided to write, if I'd written Mr. Nice now,
Right.
they could say, well, okay, you can write the book, but you're not making a penny out of it.
Okay.
Okay, but they can't sort of take it back to,
Okay.
an ex post facto.
Like what the authorities could try to claim that money
Yeah.
because it's based on illegal doings.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
All right.
It hasn't come through, but I mean, it's not on the statute books, but it's like being proposed and might be.
Okay.
So that was another reason.
Definitely see the Americans doing something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that made me think more seriously about writing crime fiction. But then I realized that if I wrote it from the point of view of a Welsh kid who went to Oxford and became a big dope dealer, I would actually be profiting by writing about my. It'd be difficult to prove that I wasn't. So I wrote it from the point of view of someone who's the exact opposite of me, female. Undercover drug cop.
Right.
So it's got to be crime fiction.
Is it first person as well?
No.
A third person?
No, third person,
Okay.
yeah. So it's got to be fiction then. I think I've sort of covered my arse on that.
Probably.
But obviously I draw on experiences, of my criminal past, obviously.
Okay. The first book was Sympathy for the Devil.
That's right, yeah.
And then you just released The Score a few months ago?
No, it's actually next week, the
Is it?
release, yeah.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
well, it's April, I think it's April the 4th.
Okay.
Is the official release. But obviously it exists in some form now, with review copies like circulating and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it can't be pre-ordered right now on Amazon or anything like that?
It can be ordered now.
It can be, okay.
Yes, yeah.
And this is going to be a trilogy, is that right?
Yes. So it's a trilogy.
You have to
deal.
write trilogies these days, right? Everybody
You
wants
do,
a
I mean,
trilogy.
particularly in crime fiction.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, it's possibly because Stieg Larsson, right?
Right, it's the Dragon Tattoo stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, wrote 3 books, all of which were published after he died. I mean, he had to
Amazing.
wait till his life was over.
Because no one
and
thought
write
any
it.
of his writing when he was dead. Oh, he was
When he's
alive.
alive, no.
He couldn't sell it, right?
No. And I don't know how long this sort of like Scandinavian crime fiction dominance is going to go on for,
What do you
got
think
Joel
of-
Nesbitt sort of doing his stuff and everything, and they're very good, I mean, they actually do. So, I mean, I think sort of a trilogy is a normal thing with a crime fiction. Publishers don't expect the first one to sell. To such an extent, they just, usually recommend you sort of go on Twitter about it and on Facebook and keep your fingers crossed you're going to stay alive until the next 2 come out. So it's a trilogy deal. I've got another sort of book in mind after that, not using the same characters, not using the same detective, the same undercover female cop. Then I don't know.
And do you enjoy the writing? Do you find it really difficult? Do you get the same rush when you're writing or publishing?
I don't get the fear, I mean, it's that, I mean, how I write, I suppose. I mean, I'll designate a day as a writing day. So I say, okay, tomorrow will be a writing day. And I will sit in front of a screen until I've written 1,000 words, even if they are crap. I might be able to sort of remix them into something later on. And hope that, what writers call a roll, I hope that a roll will kick in during those 1,000 words. Sometimes when it doesn't, of course, it's a depressing business.
And lonely, isn't it?
Yeah. It's got to be lonely, and you can be you've tried, you usually sort of, you try to do the housework or something, I mean, anything other than sort of face the reality or a blank screen, But then when the role does kick in, and I find, that, smoking cannabis helps that sort of tangential thinking and everything, which is a lovely comfort. When a role does kick in, it's one of the most enjoyable things in the world, without that fear thing. It's not an adrenaline thing. It's a very, very different.
You're creating something. You're making something out of nothing.
Yeah. Particularly if you smoke dope, because you've forgotten everything.
You've been quoted as saying that smoking dope is it's forgetfulness is the germ of
creativity. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain that?
Yeah, because and I can give an example of it too. I mean, that is the germ of creativity simply because you've got nothing else to rely on, I suppose. Once you've forgotten everything, what can you do? You can't remember anything. You've just got to create something. And I think there's a parallel. I mean, I don't know, perhaps you disagree, but during the 1920s, say, when jazz, mainly performed by sort of black guys in the States, And they could play every instrument perfectly. They'd be able to play a load of tunes, but they used to be quite big stoners. And, they'd go up on stage and clearly, have forgotten, almost every tune they've ever heard. So they had nothing but creativity to rely on. And that created the improvisation solo, actually. And I think it was a fundamental component of that. So that's what I mean, and I mean now it's an accepted form of music, an accepted form of creativity, but fairly recent one.
It's like sometimes I think I love writing. I write a lot, and I really, really enjoy the experience. And sometimes I've got so high that I've thought it's almost like I've kind of nailed the truth, but the side effect is I'm going to forget it. Like the higher you get, the side effect of that highness is that you're going to forget it, and you not even like the next day. Like if someone goes, "Hey, and it's gone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's no way to avoid that. You see, you will forget some of them, but let's hope you remember the important.
But I think the more you think, like, you don't worry about forgetting it, because you always, if you keep an open mind, you're going to remember so much good stuff. Don't be scared that that's gone.
No, never be scared of it. Just keep doing it.
It'll come through in another way.
It's a very important thing, that, actually, James. Yeah, you've got to keep sort of banging it out without wondering about its legacy or its
and what it could be.
Because
it's nothing
or its
anyway.
longevity, is there? That's what worries. Yeah.
Are you still involved with the dance music? I know you said that whenever a man comes out of prison, he should take ecstasy with his children.
Yes. I mean, it sounds rather a glib thing to say, but I mean, it just happened to be the case that I was locked up during the Ecstasy period, really, during the period of Ecstasy's popularity. So I hadn't taken it before I went to prison. Okay. And also there was very limited as to what music one could listen to in prison. I mean, Indiana radio stations aren't known for much else beyond country and western.
Right, and hip-hop, you said.
Hip-hop, I mean, the sort of the black guys would be dominating the TV thing. I mean, largely for sort of like baseball and sort of like football and stuff, but also, for the hip-hop. And I used to like that. I mean, that was fine. And I suppose like federal penitentiaries, or penitentiaries generally, are cradles of hip-hop in a sense. I mean, that's where a lot of it started and came out of. But I hadn't heard, the other stuff that was covered all over here, the sort of trance and everything like that. And music, very much my first love, of the big three. That was the first.
Really?
I was hooked on music before I was hooked on sex or drugs. Yeah. Music was the first thing, that I got hooked on in that sort of way. And I came out, and asked my kids, kids, what's been happening on the music scene, like when I've been banged up. And said, Dad, you'll never understand unless you take one of these little fellas.
Did he have one on hand?
What? No, I'm sort of characterised it. I mean, unless you take sort of an ecstasy, you're not going to understand. So I made arrangements to take, to get very, very pure ecstasy and take it with them. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, obviously there's no sexual thing involved with your own children. And but I hadn't seen them for some time, so like emotionally I caught up with them, and it was very, very important. It was crucial. And I remember thinking that then, that Dad coming out of prison, just be with his kids and take this, it will sort of get things out. And of course I understood the music as well after that. Even though the windscreen wipers are playing it on the way back, and the air conditioning unit in my home. I sort of understood it.
Hang on a minute, there's something here.
What about psychedelics? Is that something you've touched in the past, or something you're a big fan of? I know in the movie you took some acid, which at the time, what time was legal in Oxford?
Yes, it was.
65 or 66.
I mean, acid didn't become illegal in this country till 66. Okay. Yes. And I took my first in 65, and hardly anyone knew what it was then.
Again, an elite Oxford type thing?
It was again in Oxford, again in Oxford College. with with a friend of mine who later became a very, very eminent professor of epidemiology. But I mean, the funny thing, I took it every day for quite a long period before discovering it only works every 3 days, because of the tolerance for it.
Right.
Because there's very strong acid in those days. And it took me a very long time to work out, well, this is only kicking in every 3 days, because I mean, if you don't expect
Take it every day.
Well, I took it,
Wow.
for quite a long period.
And
of
just
time.
go
Howard
about
Marks
your
style.
Yeah, and
go
then-
about your normal functions. So
Yeah,
don't
I
just-
think, I must be, not trying to figure out what else I was eating, but it's simply a 3 days tolerance in your mind. I had a couple of bad trips too, so, and since then, really, I've been very, very, respectful.
Yeah.
I don't see it too much as a sort of party drug, really. It's more of a cerebral kind of masturbation.
Yeah.
And now I'll take it about once a year now, or something, just to reinvent myself and update on it. Professor Nutt, you say he's going to be here.
Yeah,
very
he'll be
soon.
in May, yeah.
I mean, he regards it as one of the safest drugs going. That's very, very safe.
Psychedelics and acid.
LSD particularly.
Well,
Partly because of the thing I mentioned there, that 3 days clearly isn't addictive, if it doesn't affect you the next day. It doesn't have that sort of crack kind of element or anything.
we had one of his colleagues here who was actually running tests at Imperial College with an MRI machine, and they're giving people psilocybin and watching what happens in the brain.
Well, that's right, because, David is particularly concerned about sort of the morbidity that sort of affects old people. And, because people do start getting worried about death when when you get to about my age, and people are living for that much longer. So there's far more morbidity around. And he's noticed, and believes. And he'll do randomized trials properly, he knows what he's doing.
Proper scientists.
Yeah. And things like psilocybin are going to stop old people being miserable because they're going to die.
A lot of,
That's good.
I think they should sell it on the if it does come out. Just have a commercial. Are you miserable?
Yeah.
Are you
They
old?
might. But
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because it's I suppose it's necessarily the case that one that is either going to die young, in a sort of tragic death of some kind, or going to crumble to bits. That's the best you're going to get, is to
Yeah.
crumble to bits. And anyone who doesn't realise that clearly needs psychiatric help.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
They're giving it to terminally ill patients now in the States. They're giving them psilocybin in a hospital environment. And they do find that people get their heads around their whole mortality and accept what's happening to them. And they find they can live their life not in a paralysis, knowing they're going to die. So
Which is a very important. To me, it's becoming increasingly important, obviously. But it's a sort of obvious problem which needs a solution, and their nature is providing it. Strong case for it being made.
do you think about death?
Yeah. Not. I don't know how often other people think about it, but I'm not every day thinking about, oh Jesus, But I do. Yeah, I always have. Thought about it from time to time, and I'm not sort of worried or afraid of death. I sometimes worry about the process. I suppose I wouldn't like to be eaten by lions. It's a terrible way to go.
And what's next for you for the next few years? We got the third book coming.
Yeah, third book, and if my crime fiction sort of career seems not to have kicked off, then I've got one more semi-autobiographical thing that I'll do.
Okay. I think it's great you're writing, by the way, because you don't have to. So you're really pushing yourself by doing that.
Yes. No, I enjoy the process, and I'm happy to. And obviously, I'm just talking about age now. There'll come a time when I will get too knackered to go up and stand for 4 hours on the stage.
Can you talk about your shows? I really want to see one.
Of course I can, yeah.
I didn't want to see yours last night because I wanted to not know you very well for this show.
Right.
But I want to come see one. How often do you perform, and what is one of your shows like?
Okay. I suppose the frequency is it's irregular, but it'd be at least 50 a year.
50, okay.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
So, that's
one a week.
At least one a week, yeah. But usually in sort of clusters,
Okay.
sort of one every night for a few weeks. And then I have time off to write, and then one every night for another period. I mean, it tends to be like that. It evolves, it changes. Obviously, it's not the same show for the last, 15 years. I've been doing it for that long. It's not the same show. It evolves a lot. Essentially, there are two different types of shows. One which has a projector, and I make full use of sort of multimedia with sort of sounds and visuals and things like that. And the other is just straightforward stand-up, without a projector.
Okay. Like stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've been, I'm a reasonably successful stand-up comic, which is not the normal kind of progression for a dope smuggler.
There's not much that you do that's normal. Howard.
And they grew out of book readings, really.
Right.
Because, the standard way of promoting a book is by reading an extract out loud in a bookshop, which is about as sterile and clinical and boring and lacking in entertainment as you can get. There is, and no, I don't think any author has written any sentence thinking, I wonder what this is going to sound like, when I read it out loud in Waterstones. No one thinks like that, So it's bound to be shit, really. And quite a few people realise this, like Irving Welsh and, Nick Cave, Roddy Doyle, and started doing readings in pubs, clubs, festival tents, anywhere other than bookshop, really.
Right.
And I simply got on that bandwagon, to be honest.
And you made it more interactive.
Yeah.
So instead of you just reading out a bit of your book, because you've had so much going on, it seems silly not to let people ask questions, tell certain bits of stories.
Yes.
Just an evolution of that, really.
Yes, it is,
Right.
and the idea, because the book has been written to be read, all right, so at least should be modified if you're going to sort of read it out loud or something, it just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and like you say, no one can make just so, like he said, sterile, isn't it? I'm going to be reading to you now.
Yeah, you might as well sit down and not say anything, just read the book. So they've grown out of that and sort of, shot off in various directions, really. So, I've got a safety net, I call it, of about 10 different sketches I could do at any time. I'm still working on the next one.
Okay. Do you still light up on stage?
No, because the smoking ban really put an end to that. Even though I think I could get away with it, because the law states that it's illegal, to smoke while performing in public, unless smoking is an integral part of the act, and I think I could qualify.
You probably could.
But there hasn't been a precedent yet.
Okay.
So.
And the show's 4 hours long sometimes?
That's the longest it would ever be, and that would include sort of signing and chatting to people after. Okay. The minimum length is actually only an hour, sometimes it's only an hour, very rarely.
Okay.
And, the most common one, the median, if you like, would be about 2 hours.
Okay. And if people want to find out where you're going to be, is it your website? Is it
Yes.
HowardMarks.com?
Yeah, howardmarks.co.uk.
.co.uk.
Yeah.
And your Twitter is at official Mr. Nice.
That's right, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have a few copycats out there?
Yeah, of course.
Who wouldn't want to be Howard Marks?
Right, yes. No, particularly with Facebook. I once looked at it in its early days, and I had 14 imposters. And 3 of them had more friends than I did.
They're more popular than you. You do something wrong, you need to copy them. You get it the wrong way around. Jesus.
Are you allowed back in the States? Or would you ever do a show? You cannot go back.
No, I'm not allowed. It's a lifetime ban. I'm what they refer to as an aggravated felon, which sounds, pretty tasty and cool, but it just means that I did a big drug steal once. And so I'm never allowed. I'm not even allowed to apply even and everything, which doesn't, obviously I prefer to be able to visit there, but it doesn't really matter. There's enough of the world I haven't been to yet at all. I sometimes worry, because occasionally I go to Jamaica or, if I should go to Canada or someone that, if there might be bad weather there or something, that they might have to be forced to be land.
Oh, right.
And then I would never get out.
They would arrest you?
Yeah,
really?
Because I've broken parole conditions, you see. I mean, parole can't be enforced in another jurisdiction, but if I found myself on American soil, for whatever reason, if they kidnap me, they could get me there.
Strange.
Yeah,
So they'll never let you
transit,
in.
Yeah.
They'll never let you in, but if you go in, they'll never let you out.
Well,
no,
maybe
never,
it would
but not
depend
never,
how
but-
long I live, but I would have to serve some time in prison for breaking parole conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, how come you haven't been on the Joe Rogan show? Seems like
Yeah,
a
that's what I
pretty
thought.
no-brainer. But I guess you won't be in LA anytime soon. Well,
Well, it could be done, I suppose. I mean, I've done sort of CNN, occasionally, because, they can do down-the-line stuff.
right, okay. And you mentioned before we started filming, China is a place you can't go.
Yes,
right now.
China, because I broke the law in Hong Kong, which is now part of China.
Right.
America, because obviously I broke the law there and got a conviction there. Australia won't let me in either.
Okay.
Even though I've never been there.
They just don't like your style.
They don't like my style. But they tend to rely on FBI records, you see.
Okay.
So maybe that's, I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. I mean, it sort of really pissed me off, actually, because when I sold out in the Melbourne Literary Festival, sold out in the Sydney Comedy Festival, and then I had Kiss FM backing my application for a visa. I mean, you think it'd be straightforward at that point again, and I've never been there. They said, no, not a chance. There'd be too much disorder. I then offered to pay for 2 policemen to be with me 24 hours a day, pay for their wages, everything. There'd be absolutely no way I could do anything wrong or disorderly. I just said no, fuck off. And then I noticed that Snoop Dogg, right, had been let in. So I wrote again, come on. You let him in. No, sorry, you can't come in. And then, of course, Cheech and Chong went on tour there,
That's just rubbing it in.
Yeah, still they won't let me in.
So they could change their mind at some point.
They could change their mind, yes. I haven't been told don't bother to apply in the future. In fact, by the reverse, by all means apply again in the future. And it's ironic when you consider the whole country. First of all, you pretty much had to be convicted to get there. So,
Is this part of your act at all? Okay, cool. Have you ever hung out with Snoop Dogg, who's Snoop Lion right now?
no. Oh, yes, he is Snoop Lion. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he's kind of gone Rastafari and
Yeah.
in Jamaica. But
I've never hung out with him, no.
okay, you guys might get along.
Oh, I'm sure I'll get along with Snoop Dogg, yeah. Must find out his connection to Australian immigration.
Do people seek you out? Do celebrities seek you out, or do you kind of live a kind of quiet life besides your shows and your books and things?
Well, the only celebrity who's very, very actively sought me out. There's 2. One is Sean Penn.
Okay.
And the other one is another guy called Howard Marks, who runs Oak Tree Capital Investment.
Yeah, I saw him when I was Googling you.
He's
He's worth billions or something. Hedge
he's
fund
like
guy.
one of the, yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
He's one of the richest guys in the world. And we met each other the first time yesterday morning, actually, because we both fed up of seeing each other when we Google ourselves.
That's funny.
A terribly nice man.
Yeah?
Yeah. I spent an hour with him yesterday. And he actively sought me out,
Okay.
And Sean did, simply because he read the book and thought it would make a good film, and it was quite instrumental actually in ensuring that the film actually got made in the end.
Did he produce it, or he introduce you to the right? Introduce the people?
He
to
wrote a letter. He came over here, managed to get hold of me. Obviously, we had lunch together. And I told him, well, I've sold it to the BBC now, and because I sold it almost as soon as I'd written Mr. Nice for a song, because I didn't realize it was going to be a bestseller. I just took whatever price BBC gave it. And then the BBC felt it was a bit too non-PC, really, and sort of, the various reasons they just didn't do it. And Sean sort of wrote a letter saying he would possibly direct it, be a producer, maybe act in it, everything. Just say, please let me champion this film, Okay. And I think I put the letter in the book. I think, in the updated version of Mr. Nice, I reprinted the letter. The BBC just didn't bother, didn't take any notice of it at all, because they're not like any regular production company, I mean, they can sit on something forever.
Yeah.
I mean, the easiest thing for them to do, right, wait till the fucker dies.
That's the worst thing.
I mean, yeah, they're a quasi-government institution.
Yes, they are.
They tax you, basically. A TV license is a tax.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
No, they're problematic. So, I mean, those are the only two that jump to mind. But, I mean, quite often, I mean, the advantage of being a sort of very minor celebrity, as I am, you do get to meet, like, non-minor celebrities. You get to meet major ones. If I'm at a sort of, like, an event or something where there are lots of celebrities, a number will come up, and sort of, like, compliment me on my book or anything like that, and make themselves known to me and everything. So yes, in a sort of location where there's lots of celebrities, quite a few of them will make themselves known to me.
Is that cool?
Yeah, 100% cool.
You like that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Because the BBC, sorry to go back, because the BBC had the book, is that who the film came through in the end?
In the end, the BBC just relinquished it.
Okay.
So
So they bought it off you and then just said, oh, whatever.
They
or
bought
sold
it off me, paid me for it. I sold my rights to them. There was some complication between TV rights and film rights because they constrain each other to some extent, because they all end up as DVDs, or there's some reason why they constrain each other. And they didn't proceed with it. Eventually, forgot about it. And it was people like Reese, Sean, and other people who kind of just forced the issue. And the BBC just said, okay, just don't credit us with it, have it.
Wow.
We're all done officially.
I mean, I can't imagine anything worse than someone buying something, your film, your story, about to make it, and then they sit on it and to just do nothing. I think that would be terrible.
Well, it isn't my fault, really, James. Or I mean, I can blame the literary agent, but again, using the same logic, I chose him. Because the standard thing would have been to get an option, go in, so just for
You're kind of learning this at a later date, though, aren't you? By the time you kind of hit trouble.
They didn't do that, I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't realise that.
And were you happy with Reese Ifan's portrayal of you, and do you guys still hang out?
Oh yes, because I mean, Reese and I have known each other for 17 years or something like that now. I mean, pretty much as soon as I came out of prison, I met Reese.
Is it a Welsh thing? You guys are all pretty close?
Yes, it's more than that, though. It's not just a Welsh thing.
Okay.
I mean, the time that I met him, he was... he was the singer for the Super Furry Animals, which are, an indie band that was pretty popular over here. Before they became good, he was the vocalist.
You can say that too.
And when I met him, he was sleeping on the drummer's floor of the Super Furry Animals and doing some pretty minor things on, like perhaps reading a story on radio or something. No, he hadn't acted in any films at all. And I hadn't written Mr. Nice then. I'd written it, but it hadn't been published. And we got on, and talked about what we were hoping, our ambitions and aspirations, etc. And at one point he said, well, if your book does come out and it's made into a film, can I play you? So I said, yeah. No one had asked me that before. So I said, yes, we no one knew I was getting a book coming out.
Wow.
And we just stuck to it. We just stuck to that deal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. And of course, I thought I was doing a young kid a favour or something like that. But yeah, of course, you can't give the kid a break. Of course, then he goes mega. And we'd always do it who a favour.
Don't forget.
But because we knew each other, we would like meet each other at festivals and go on the Raz together and the Lash together, and both have similar lifestyles. He didn't have to study me at all, even though he's very capable of studying people. And like his portrayal of Peter Cook, I think, was amazing. But he didn't have to do any of that with me.
He's had the best kind of study ever.
Yeah,
He's been your friend.
I mean, if they make a film of him, he'd be the best person to play.
He goes both ways. Yeah, don't forget.
Howard, we could probably do this for 2 more hours, but I just thank you so much for coming. It's just,
Well, you can tell how much I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, you seem natural at this. We were talking before. You should do your own podcast, so we'll talk about that later. Okay. But yeah, you're such a natural. Just so much even better than I imagined or expected. So thanks for coming on.
No, very much my pleasure, Brian. Thanks for inviting
appreciate
me.
your frankness, and I'm so glad you're still on speaking tours and everything. So, and I'll put a word in with Uncle Sam and see if I can sort that out.
If you can.
Yeah. Although I have a British passport now, so I don't know if they like.
No, don't take any risks yourself.
You know, so yeah, thank you very much.
No, my pleasure.
Thanks, Howard. It's really
James.
Yes, thank you.
Colossus, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Stop.
You're a natural co-pilot. Yes? You're a big man and a big-hearted man.
Oh.
Yes?
I'll take that.
So if
that's correct.
Please follow James at jcolossus on Twitter. He's got an excellent blog and an excellent YouTube channel. This is Colossal Concerns?
Colossal Concerns is the blog.
Okay.
And my YouTube channel, Colossal Collective.
Colossal Collective, yeah. He's got some crazy videos. You got the new Dan and Severn video coming out soon, right?
The Don't Fry one.
Don't Fry. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Literally soon. So
you got to check out some of his videos. He's a lot funnier than he looks. That might have just cost me. No, they're really good. Oh, okay. But no, yeah, check him out, definitely.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, excellent. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please click and subscribe. If you want to see the extremely good-looking Howard Marks, come to our YouTube channel, and you can watch all of us, including the Colossus, at channel London Real TV. We're on Twitter at London Real TV and Facebook, and come join the party, etc., etc. Namaste. Thank you so much, Howard.
Thank you.
Until then, guys, it's about the journey.
The hardest part for me is when I get home and theoretically I have a week off, is actually taking a week off. I'm not good about that because I've made my hobbies into my career. So normally I would have sat back and done some art or written some music or.
But do you find you love it less because you do it as a job?
I think if I did, I would stop doing it. I actually was this is embarrassing. I was a full-time portrait artist.